this is a mature art, and many people in the community were very concerned about this sub, and a number of the top players in the deep submergence engineering community even wrote letters to the company saying that what they were doing was too experimental to carry passengers and that needed to be certified and so on. So I'm struck by the similarity of the Titanic disaster itself.
And I've broken some rules to make this. I think I've broken them with logic and good engineering behind me. The carbon fiber and titanium, there's a rule you don't do that. Well, I did. It's picking the rules that you break that are the ones that will add value to others and add value to society. And that really, to me, is about innovation.
Hello, everyone, from the billionaire-controlled hellhole of the United Kingdom. And today we are talking about billionaires who sadly met their untimely demise in a submarine near the wreck of the Titanic. And even James Cameron said there are stark parallels between what the captain of the Titanic did and what the owner of the company who runs these submarines and was actually piloting the submarine did in this instance, in that they ignored safety precautions. And James Cameron even said, like, in the community, this company is known for doing that sort of thing. There was even a whistleblower saying about how unsafe a submarine was. Surprise, surprise, that something terrible actually happened. So today, what I wanted to do was just talk about all of this and just talk about how this submarine disaster is just a monument to the hubris of rich people. So before we go any further, please like the video. In the comments, let me know what is the dumbest take you've seen about the submarine stuff. It's probably the woke stuff I've seen on Twitter. Also, follow me on social media at the Kavernacle on Twitter, but also on Instagram. I'm now also on Blue Sky. If you are on Blue Sky as well, follow me there. Also, consider becoming a patron. I'm trying to build up as many $1 to $3 patrons as possible, and the benefits include getting access to exclusive content, the Discord server, and my Nintendo Switch friend code. And also check out the subreddit and my second channel down in the description. So it's 10 PM right now in the UK, and this is basically the most updated news story about what happened. If you're watching this tomorrow, the weekend, watching like a month from now, there's probably updated stuff. They've declared the 5 people dead and basically saying that the submarine imploded near the wreck of the Titanic. So Sky News reporting all 5 on board the missing Titan sub are believed to have died. The company that operates the vessel said in a statement. In a news conference, Rear Admiral John Morga, who is leading the search, confirmed that a remotely operated vehicle had discovered the nose cone of a missing sub, approximately 1,600 foot from the bow of the Titanic on the sea floor. Additional debris was found nearby, with the Rear Admiral saying, in consultation with experts from within Unified Command, the debris is consistent with the catastrophic loss of the pressure chamber. On behalf of the US Coast Guard and the entire Unified Command, I offer my deepest condolences to the family. At the moment, it seems like there's no trace of the bodies, but they are still looking. And while the debris is consistent with a catastrophic implosion of the vessel, he stressed that it's too early to know when this happened, and underwater robots remain on the scene to gather information. So who were the people on board the Titan submarine? You had Hamish Harding, who we're going to talk about later because of his stepson, Shahzada and Suleiman Dawood, who are 2 members of one of Pakistan's richest families. And sadly, his son, Suleiman, was only 19 and was a student, so that is a sad part of the story. And probably the villain of the news story, Stockton Rush, age 61, is the chief executive and founder of OceanGate, the company behind the mission to the Titanic. So a lot of people have been joking and memeing about the submarine. A lot of people in leftist spaces are basically saying you should be celebrating it as a good thing because a load of rich people died for hubris and for doing something like super dangerous. Me personally, I'm pretty apathetic. Like, I'm not going to mourn the loss of someone who's part of Pakistan's like richest family, like these billionaires and stuff. Like I said, I do feel bad for the 19-year-old. And even though you might think, well, that 19-year-old might have just grown up to be just like his father, just like his family. Also, there's a chance he might not have as well. And also just, I don't particularly like violence and death in this way. So for me personally, how to deal with most billionaires in like a leftist way, I would just love their like assets seized, their property seized, and redistribute the wealth. And if they've done illegal things, put them in prison and stuff. Like, there are actually like very, very evil billionaires out there, I don't know too much about these ones to say, like, they deserve this, like, pretty terrible death and stuff. If I have to trade in my communist card for that take, then so be it. But also at the same time, I will say the pearl clutching around this is pretty ridiculous, especially as we're going to talk about. Hundreds and hundreds of migrants have just drowned in the Mediterranean, and lots of people who are very upset about these 5 dying do not care, I guess, because if you're like a migrant or, you know, a refugee, let's be honest, these people are refugees, and you're stateless, apparently, you know, you deserve to drown in the ocean. It's all your fault, and we should have no sympathy for any of you, apparently. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. But now let's talk about Stockton Rush, OceanGate, and everything like that. Now, James Cameron is not just an expert on the Titanic. He is an expert on, like, deep sea diving as well. He's been part of a team, like personally part of a team that went down and did one of the deepest dives in human history and stuff. So he knows what he's talking about. And he gave an interview to ABC basically saying people knew this company were dodgy. People knew this company skirted around the safety regulations. So I probably won't be able to play footage of James Cameron talking, but just here is the audio for you.
And you know, we have improved drastically over that period of time, and the certification protocols that all other deep submergence vehicles, except this one, that carry passengers, especially paying passengers, all over the world in tropical waters, deep coral reefs, other wreck sites, and so on. The safety record is the gold standard. Absolutely. Not only no fatalities, but no major incidents requiring all of these assets to converge to a site. Of course, that's the nightmare that we've all lived with. We worked on our sphere for our deep vehicle that went to the Challenger Deep for over 3 years, just in the computer, before we even made the thing. And then, of course, we pressure tested it over and over and over, and so on. So, you know, this is a mature art, and many people in the community were very concerned about this sub, and a number of the top players in the deep submergence engineering community even wrote letters to the company saying that what they were doing was too experimental to carry passengers and that needed to be certified and so on. So I'm struck by the similarity of the Titanic disaster itself, where the captain was repeatedly warned about ice ahead of his ship, and yet he steamed at full speed into an ice field on a moonless night, and many people died as a result. And for a very similar tragedy where warnings went unheeded to take place at the same exact site, with all the diving that's going on all around the world, I think it's just astonishing. It's really quite surreal.
And I don't know if I played it for you, but he says it's a very small community, so people even like wrote letters to this company saying it is unsafe. Now, this also goes well with what Stockton Rush said himself, because I found this interview floating around on Twitter, and he basically talks about like breaking the rules.
I'd like to be remembered as an innovator. I think it was General MacArthur said, "You're remembered for the rules you break." And, you know, I've broken some rules to make this. I think I've broken them with logic and good engineering behind me. The carbon fiber and titanium, there's a rule you don't do that. Well, I did. It's picking the rules that you break that are the ones that will add value to others and add value to society. And that really, to me, is about innovation. It's not invention. You know, innovation is when you take an invention and you make it, you know, accepted broadly. And maybe think of ocean exploration the way everybody thinks of space exploration. Because this is where we're going to find the strange new life forms. You know, and the future of mankind is underwater. It's not on Mars. We're not going to have a base on Mars or the moon. You know, we'll waste a lot of money. We will have a base underwater, because when the sun extinguishes, there will still be hydrothermal vents, and there will still be those life forms down there that are living off of chemosynthesis that don't need the sun. You know, if we trash this planet, the best lifeboat for mankind is underwater.
So, like James Cameron was saying, there are parallels with the actual sinking of the Titanic. Here is the hubris of someone not paying attention to proper safety protocols, and it got a bunch of people killed who didn't know any better, because OceanGate had actually ran successful trips with this submarine to the Titanic, I think about like 4 times or something. So he feels like then it's safe forever. But as we're going to get into, there were massive safety problems. And even he was saying there, you know, I broke the rules. I broke the rules. I did things that are not done in this community. But things are done in this community for a reason, because it's super dangerous and there is no room for error when you're that deep in the ocean. So just a little article talking about the Titanic quickly, just to compare the two. So the sinking of the Titanic, in an article called Risk Engineering, so it just describes it. The Titanic was the largest passenger ship at the time and had been built with several new technological features. The ship was famously described by its operator as practically unsinkable because its hull was separated into 16 watertight compartments using remotely activated watertight doors. If the hull were able to be penetrated, that compartment would be closed to prevent propagation to other parts of the vessel. In the worst case, this design and associated pumping mechanisms that evacuated water from a breach was assumed to enable the ship to sink very slowly and allow passengers to evacuate with time to spare. However, these compartments were not really watertight as they did not possess a roof section. Making the bulkheads higher would have reduced interior space and made the ship less comfortable for passengers. When the iceberg sliced through the hull, the first 6 compartments, a chain reaction began of the watertight bulkhead filling up, then flooding the compartments beside it. The ship also did not have a double hull, but only a double bottom as a money-saving measure. And then goes on to say, operator hubris. The Titanic had been warned about the presence of icebergs by several ships, but did not slow down. There was not enough lifeboats to accommodate all those aboard, a fact which seems astonishing today, but was allowed by outdated maritime safety regulations of the time. Titanic only carried enough lifeboats for 1,178 people, slightly more than half the number on board, and 1/3 her total capacity. The choice was partly due to the hubris of the ship's designers, who overestimated the effectiveness of the new technological measures implemented in the ship, and partly due to lax regulations. The ship designers may have preferred to maximize the space on deck, which was accessible to the more wealthy passengers. So it's just so ironic. Another group of people met their end near the Titanic, basically for similar reasons. Ignoring safety measures, believing that their sub was basically indestructible, and basically skirting around safety regulations to make this sub in the first place, and then it ended in disaster, just like Titanic ended in disaster as well. But now you might be wondering, like, what is actually wrong with this sub? Well, many things, but let's get into this article that came out during the search for the sub. So, New Republic reporting, missing Titanic sub once faced massive lawsuit over depths it could safely travel to. The tourist submersible that went missing while exploring the Titanic was previously the target of a safety complaint from an employee of OceanGate, the parent company that owns the sub and runs tourist expeditions of the wreck. That employee complained specifically that the sub was not capable of descending to such extreme depths before he was fired. That's according to legal documents obtained by the New Republic. According to the court documents in a 2018 case, OceanGate employee David Lockridge, a submersible pilot, voiced concerns about the safety of the sub. According to a press release, Lockridge was director of marine operations at the time, responsible for the safety of all crews and clients. The concerns Lockridge voiced came to light as part of a breach of contract case related to Lockridge refusing to greenlight manned tests of the early models of the sub over safety concerns. Lockridge was fired, and then OceanGate sued him for disclosing confidential information about the Titan sub. In response, Lockridge filed a compulsory counterclaim where he alleged wrongful termination over being a whistleblower about the quality and safety of the sub. Lockridge, in his counterclaim, alleged that rather than addressing Lockridge's concerns, OceanGate instead summarily terminated his employment in efforts to silence him and avoid addressing the safety and quality control issues. The counterclaim said that, given the prevalent flaws in the previously tested 1/3 scale model, or 1/3 model, not really sure what that means, and the visible flaws in the carbon end samples for the Titan, Lockridge again stressed the potential danger to passengers of the Titan as the sub reached extreme depths. Counterclaim also details a meeting at OceanGate's Everett, Washington facility with engineering staff where several individuals expressed concerns over to the engineering director. The OceanGate CEO, Stockton Rush, asked Lockridge to conduct a quality inspection of the Titan per the complaints. Lockridge initially verbally expressed concerns about the safety and quality of the Titan to OceanGate executive management, but the concerns were ignored. Lockridge identified numerous issues that posed serious safety concerns and offered corrective action and recommendations for each. Lockridge was particularly concerned about non-destructive testing performed on the hull of the Titan, but he was reportedly told that no scan of the hull or bond line could be done to check for delaminations, porosity, and voids of sufficient adhesion to the glue being used to the thickness of the hull. He was also told there was no such equipment that could conduct a test like that. After Lockridge issued his inspection report, OceanGate officials convened a meeting in January 2018 with the CEO, Human Resource Director, and Engineering Director, Lockridge, and the Operations Director, per the complaint. At the meeting, Lockridge discovered why he had been denied access to the viewpoint information from the engineering department. The viewpoint at the forward of the submersible was only built to certified pressure of 1,300 meters, although OceanGate intended to take passengers down to the depths of 4,000 meters. Lockridge learned that the viewpoint manufacturer would only certify to a depth of 1,300 meters due to experimental design of the viewport supplied by OceanGate, which was out of the pressure vessels for human occupancy standards. OceanGate refused to pay for the manufacturer to build a viewport that would meet the required depth of 4,000 meters. The Titanic is estimated to sit on the ocean floor at a depth of nearly 4,000 meters. But that seems to line up with what Stockton Rush was even saying in that news report, breaking the rules, going around the rules. Here is a whistleblower saying that this sub just wasn't appropriate for the dive. Now, you guys might be asking yourselves, if he's raising concerns about the viewport only being able to do less than half the depth required. I was basically reading some engineering Twitter, and they're saying, although it wasn't certified to go to those depths, that doesn't mean necessarily the viewport won't hold up if it does go to those depths. What they said is, after doing it a couple times, it then could break. So if they didn't get a new viewport each time, let's say they use the same one for the 4 journeys they did, then if that's why it imploded, which seems like it could have been a reason, then that's why. Because they repeatedly used it without certifying it could be used in those depths. And that is what the whistleblower was basically saying. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you went down that far one time, it would definitely not hold up. Like I said, what people were saying is that repeated use would pretty much ensure it would fail after a short amount of time. So yeah, it seems like this was just destined for disaster with a CEO, too much hubris, too much money, felt like the rules didn't apply to him, like most people, and then he fires the guy who raises all these complaints, and he doesn't let him look at the stuff properly because he knows what he'll say. He knows this guy, Lockridge, played it by the book, believed it was unsafe, and James Cameron was saying the safety standards in the industry, very, very rigorous, really good. Lockridge appeared to adhere to that, well, OceanGate clearly didn't, and now we have 5 people dead because of this. Now, even on news reports last year, the way they described it wasn't very reassuring. So on this CBS report, the reporter says, I couldn't help noticing how many pieces of the sub seemed improvised. With the off-the-shelf components, piloting the craft is run with a video game controller. Someone said to him, it seems like this sub has elements of MacGyver, Jerry Rigness. I mean, you're putting construction pipes as ballast. I don't know if I use that description of it, Rush said. But there are certain things that you want to be buttoned down. The pressure vessel is not MacGyver at all, because that's what we work with Boeing and NASA and the University of Washington. Everything else can fail, your thrusters can go, your lights can go out, and you'll still be safe. And on the video game element, so you guys might have seen this online, the video game controller they were using seemed pretty terrible. It's not uncommon for people in the military, especially, to use video game controllers like an Xbox 360 controller to control drones and stuff. But the problem is, most of these controllers are better quality. Microsoft Xbox controller is a good quality controller. Sony PlayStation, good quality. Even a Nintendo Pro controller is good quality as well. Lots of people like using them, have a good battery life as well, but it wasn't plugged in. So you're setting yourself up for disaster. So Gene Park wrote an article just talking about all of this, and he basically said, what is notable is the specific kind of controller the Titanic vessel used. It's been identified as a Logitech GF710 controller released in 2011. Logitech is known for high-quality video game controllers. The most worrying detail of the controller is that it operates wirelessly through Bluetooth. All of the military applications described above have controllers wired in, so there's no risk of disconnection and any issues regarding radio transmission. Amazon reviews the controller, which retail at $29.99 are hit or miss. The controller generally works, but a few reviews note its wireless nature leads to disconnection issues. Now, it seems pretty clear at this point, the controller failing, probably not the problem that caused the implosion, but it probably just says a lot about how this was designed. Like, sure, a Bluetooth controller can work, but do you really want to rely on Bluetooth when you're going so far down in the ocean, when most people who use these types of controllers to pilot things have them plugged in? Because it just makes all the sense in the world. You don't want a finicky Bluetooth controller that costs $30 to pilot something where you're responsible for people's lives. So yeah, just like the actual Titanic disaster, rich people's hubris has caused the deaths of lots of people. Maybe not as tragic as the Titanic, because you had a lot of poorer people on there who suffered needlessly, and I believe it was $250K each to get in this submarine. I genuinely just feel sad mostly for that 19-year-old who wouldn't have known any better. Of course he wouldn't have. Like, think about yourself at 19. Your rich dad says, want to go see the Titanic in this submarine. It's gone before, a couple times in fact. Seems okay. Takes like 12 hours. It will be a fun adventure. A lot of people at that age would probably say yeah. So I pretty much don't blame the 19-year-old for doing that. I'm just sad it happened. For a lot of us adults, you would probably even see the submarine and be like, I'm not getting in that. Like, seriously, that looks like a death trap. Even if it had done like 50 visits to the Titanic, had a perfect safety record, I would not get in that thing. And something James Cameron also said is that most submarines like this don't even have like malfunctions, don't have anything wrong with them. And OceanGate's sub had loads of problems. So many times it had to abandon even going to the Titanic because of like faults it had. And that's because they skirted around safety regulations and fired a whistleblower who brought it to light. Now, a more serious point to end it is that this whole search for these missing billionaires and rich people comes at a time where recently near Greece, a refugee boat sunk and hundreds of people died. And people, of course, pointing out the discrepancy in coverage between that and this, and also how much we extend our inhumanity to each group of people as, like, you know, a Western society in both instances. And then I read an article like this, and I've seen other stories like this. I don't know if it's the same one, but German sea captain faces 20 years in jail for migrant rescue efforts, saying they face a 20-year prison sentence for helping to rescue more than 1,000 migrants at sea at risk of drowning in the Mediterranean. Pia Klemp, one of just a handful of female boat captains, warned that sea rescue missions had become criminalized, as she vowed to fight her case all the way to the European Court of Human Rights. She is the latest victim of the far-right Italian government's crackdown on desperate migrants trying to reach Europe by sea, which has seen those engaging in humanitarian rescue missions charged with assisting illegal migration. She explains that her actions are lawful and protected by the 1982 United Nations Law of the Sea. According to its Article 98, every state shall require the master of a ship to render assistance to any person found at sea in danger of being lost, and proceed with all possible speed to the rescue of persons in distress. Now, various European governments in the Mediterranean have been accused of actually, you know, making these ships stay in the Mediterranean, especially the ones run by people smugglers and stuff, and basically just half-hearting their attempts to rescue these people. Basically, like, allowing these refugees to drown simply because they're stateless, simply because they are poor and fleeing war and poverty and looking for opportunity in Europe. So if a human being is not rich, they are not worth saving, according to most European governments. Like with this submarine, no expense was spared by the United States to try and find the submarine. Like none, because it had lots of rich people in, well-connected people, people who had a lot of influence. But when it's people who are fleeing terrible circumstances, dying in overcrowded ships, in their hundreds at the same time, the reaction of, you know, right-wing governments in Europe and just any governments in Europe is not our problem. Shouldn't have done it. Should have stayed at the first safe country they found. But yeah, it's just depressing. It always comes up. We always see these events which show the stark reality. It, you know, happened with Ukraine as well. Ukrainian refugees are European. We must save them all. Open up your borders for Ukraine. which people did. Loads of Ukrainians got sheltered across Europe. Oh, but if they are poor Pakistanis, if they are poor North Africans, if they are poor whatever type of person that isn't European and white and not compatible with Western culture, then they just deserve to drown. It's their own fault. We don't have any responsibility to help these people anymore. And actually, if you help these people, we'll try and put you in prison for 20 years for helping illegal immigration. Like, that is the state of the world politics. And just on a little tangent for the end, I just find this whole xenophobic policy against refugees so ridiculous. It's only going to get worse. So you can just keep putting your head in the sand and pretend it will all go away if you let people drown in the Mediterranean, or you criminalize people actually helping these people. It's not going away. Parts of the world where these people are coming from are going to become unlivable due to climate change. We have plenty of space in Europe. We have plenty of space across the West. We could help these people, but we don't. And in my own country, of course, the UK, has got insanely xenophobic. You basically can't even claim asylum now. They all say, like, oh, it's all about claiming legal asylum. You basically cannot do that in the UK unless you're from Hong Kong or Ukraine right now, right? And I've been predicting this for a while. This is how the whole of Europe is going to be taken over by the far right. All this xenophobia drummed up against refugees and migrants is going to be used for more far-right governments to come to power, not just in Italy, Hungary, Poland, but across the whole of Western Europe as well. It's going to happen in France. It's happening in the UK right now by stealth because the Tory party have become basically far-right under Johnson and Sunak, and it's going to happen in Spain as well with the rise of Vox. And it's very, very depressing and just shows, you know, how much our world, Westerners, wealthy people, we just don't care about people who don't look like us. We don't care about people who are poor. They're disposable. We don't really bat an eyelid at hundreds and hundreds of them drowning in the Mediterranean. 5 rich people, everyone's crying about it. Everyone's thinking about their families because they feel like, well, we can relate to the life of, you know, some of the richest people in Pakistan, and billionaires in the UK cannot relate to those refugees who died fleeing, you know, poverty or war or whatever. Even though like 99% of people watching this video, we're far closer to being the people on the boat who drown in the Mediterranean than being the people who drown in the submarine. Having nothing and getting on like overcrowded boats versus paying $250,000 for a submarine trip, which sadly was ruined by someone's hubris who got you all killed. It's not the same. But anyway, let me know what you guys think about all of this, and if you made it this far, thank you for watching.